Hi everyone, my name's Kelly and I am the Youth Facilitator at Multicultural Services. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight to our next Your Voice, Your Vote event. Before we begin this event, we would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners and custodians of the land from which we're joining you from, which is the land of the Dja Dja Wurrung's people. And we would like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Welcome to Your Voice, Your Vote. Tonight, I am joined with Bruno Spandonide, who is someone who's been involved with our organization for quite a while and is a really important and wonderful member of our community. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Bruno.
Thanks so much, Kelly. It's very exciting.
So, really excitingly, you became an Australian citizen this year. Congratulations.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, it became a citizen on March the 16th. It was just before the first wave of COVID-19, and I believe that the citizenship ceremony was the last one that took place physically. So very privileged from that point of view as well. And it was quite extraordinary, like a really beautiful feeling. I had a ceremony. I was between someone from Uruguay and someone from Sri Lanka. It was really beautiful. There were over almost 100 people, getting their citizenship. And I was there also with three people that I knew personally, and it was a really nice feeling. Someone from Afghanistan, someone else from the UK, and someone from India. And it was quite a privilege and an honor to be part of this citizenship group. And yeah, a beautiful ceremony. Really, Bendigo's ceremony is very inclusive, has some very warm messages. We all received a little native tree plant. It was very humbling. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of attending a citizenship ceremony for a family friend before. It's such a great experience. What did it mean for you to become a citizen after, is it 13 or 14 years of living in
Yeah,
Australia?
14 years actually. Yeah, it's funny because I was reflecting on it, and for me, it has a special significance, Kelly, because I was born a political refugee, and I became French very early in my childhood. And my parents always said, they came from Romania. It was a country where, it wasn't a democracy, and they chose France because they had some family attachments, but also because of the principles attached and values attached to, and I guess the broader society also attached to the country that they were able actually to determine almost like a bit of a choice for themselves, in choosing a country. And it's very true. That was very much the case for me, even though I would say that I live in Australia for love reasons, because my wife is Australian. There's something really special for me about Australia and choosing a country to become a citizen of. And it's an exceptional privilege to be able actually to choose a country like that. And the values that I love the most about Australia are highly democratic. They're very inclusive. It's a country that is not only welcoming, but also, there's a whole thinking around giving a fair go to people around as well. Um, Being a bit relaxed also, which I really love. Um, there's a nice idea around the tall syndrome puppy. Some people don't like it. Some people like it. I really like it because it just shows a lot of thinking around equity and around the fact that people are um, meant to be treated equally and in a fair and reasonable way. And I really love this thinking. That's something that I always felt was really a beautiful side of Australia, and I always felt a deep connection to the country from that point of view. And for me, I would have never imagined, Kelly, before in my life to become one day a citizen of Australia, an Australian person and citizen. Um, and I remember when I was a kid, reading about kangaroos and my parents telling me, if you dig a hole from France, like really deep, at the other end of the world, you arrive in Australia. I thought, oh wow, that's crazy. Can you actually get there with a plane or a boat? And they said, yeah, it's probably better even to take a plane. Um, but yeah, it's fascinating, and I think I became Australian before becoming Australian in some ways. Like as a citizen, there were so many things I appreciated when I lived in Tasmania. For instance, I really loved just the smell of the gum trees. I became fondly attached to that. Um, moving to Victoria, there was a different side of the Victorian society that I came to really cherish, and there's a lot of humility in Victoria and friendliness, and I thought that consistently I've seen people being very friendly and very humble in the way they interact with each other, and that's something that is quite remarkable. Um, and then also there's a lot of things that I got to like, and develop a taste for, and not quite Vegemite yet, but a lot of things really. And so I feel very much Australian. It's a really beautiful feeling.
So are you saying that Australian food is better than French food?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I would say that both, cuisine have strengths and qualities, and they're quite distinguished. Actually, a funny thing is that every time we go to France for a long holiday, often what we miss the most coming back to Australia are a few staple dish and some products that we get really used to in the supermarket, and they're very hard to find. Funnily, the latte coffee is something that is really nice in Victoria, and you can't find a good latte in Paris. And also sometimes the quality and offer of the variety of the offer in terms of the food scene and cuisine. If you go to Melbourne, you can have really amazing state-of-the-art Chinese meal. You can have an amazing, authentic, like really delicious Indian meal. You can have amazing Malaysian cuisine, and it's a very global city in that sense, Melbourne, and worldly food scene. And I think that's something that is pretty unique. I don't know many cities around the world that have and display so much variety in terms of food scene. And so that's exceptional. I remember, like when I arrived in Melbourne, I went to Pellegrini's with an Italian mate, and I thought, oh wow, it's so nice. They have good Italian cuisine. And the next day, I went to a Malaysian restaurant. And I thought, wow, they even have like amazing, like Southeastern Asian cuisine here. And after that, my auntie took me to the next week to a French restaurant. It was like being in Paris, and I said, "Wow, that's pretty special."
So even with the travel restrictions, we don't need to leave the country. Well, we can't get to Melbourne right now,
That's
but
right. Yeah, and
at
Bendigo is
some
pretty
point.
good. Bendigo is getting way better with food, and so I have the feeling that Australia is one of those countries where you can actually feel a citizen of the world, being Australian. And that's something that is really beautiful. I would actually myself, and that's something that my auntie gave me as a almost a principle. She says, oh, I'm a citizen of the world before being anything else. It's the universal belonging of being a human, and wanting the best for humans and the world in itself. And I think that being Australian, that's what it means for me, um, and to some extent also being French and Australian as well. Like from my parents and ancestry, it's a very beautiful feeling.
So this upcoming council elections are going to be your first chance to vote in Australia as an Australian citizen. How do you feel about voting?
It's funny because it's more than a chance. It's actually a duty and a responsibility. It's mandatory in Australia to vote, which I think is fantastic. And one thing that we forget is how much of a privilege it is to be able to vote. In so many countries, people do not have the ability to vote, don't have the right to vote. And if they do, sometimes there's just one party to vote for. And it means that they do not have the freedom of making a choice. And more than making a choice, expressing their own aspirations, almost through changing a pathway choosing a pathway for their own country. And being able to do that means that you are able to relate to your own society in a way that you're almost feeling included at more holistic level. You really are able to make some choice about the greater good in your own country. And for me, that's something that is quite exceptional. And we tend to forget the fact that, you know, just in the 1900s, women didn't have the right to vote, and that's something that became more of an option in Australia in the 1900s. Actually, in France in the late 1940s. Um, yeah, and Aboriginal people didn't have the right to vote before the 1960s. And in other countries, actually, today, people don't have the right to vote, and they don't have actually the right to choose from different people who could represent them. So this political freedom for me is something that is exceptional. And yeah, I'm feeling very excited to be able to vote for the first time in Australia. And I feel connected with 17 or 18 other millions of Australians who will be able to vote as well. And that's a great thing. So for me, I feel connected to Australians by having this ability to vote. And I feel very empowered because it means that I can um, relate fully to the vision that people have for this country, and bring that. What I love also about the voting system in Australia is that it's highly democratic. It means that everyone has to vote, and that brings a fundamental equity in the system, because it means that like irrespective of your social status or your economic privileges in a country, or disadvantages in a country, your vote is going to count as much as someone else. And it means that even if you disagree with someone, or you're not very happy with the outcome of an election, you can actually come to terms with it, because it means that your other co-citizens had the ability to make this choice for the country, and that's something that we can all relate for each other, and almost like cherish for each other. It's something really beautiful. So yeah, very, very excited from this point of view. Like when I vote, Kelly, I'm always quite excited. I have this feeling, this little jumpy feeling in my legs. Oh, it's voting day. It's I know that in Australia there's also a bit of a tradition for sausage or something.
Yeah,
Uh,
unfortunately not getting that this year with the
exactly.
postal vote.
Yeah. So that might change a little bit the feeling.
You could do it at
Uh,
home. Cook some
That's right,
sausages at home.
exactly. A nice little Barbie. Um, but I think this tradition is something nice too. It's a little. It sometimes there are some little details in the celebration that people have. And I remember voting for the first time when I was 18 in France, and I love the ceremony around it. It's very official over there, and but it is important. It's part of our democracy. It's part of our society and how we embrace the inclusiveness and equality, and I guess political freedom of our society. And that's the one day, that we remember, oh yeah, we have this political freedom. We can actually have some impact and influence on our society. We can express ourselves more than just, like our day-to-day ideas. It's the long-term thinking. The one thing that I would say is a bit different is that back in France, it's not an obligation to vote. A lot of people actually do not vote because they're a bit disillusioned about the voting system and the candidate lineup as well. One thing that is quite interesting is how well informed people are, despite the fact that they don't vote. So you have a lot of debates on TV. When I'm saying a lot, it's almost like every day. And people speak about that constantly, like literally, like over the phone, they speak about vote the candidates all the time and different ideas. While here, it's a little bit more potentially not taboo, more private and individual. You can speak about that, but with good friends, which I also like. It's just a different system. And I really love the fact that it's actually, a responsibility and an obligation to vote, because it means that basically we do participate in the society.
I
It's a
love
great
that
thing.
you phrased it as a privilege voting. Like it is of course an obligation because it's mandatory here, but it's also something, you know, under 18s can't vote, non-citizens can't vote, people on different visas like international students and asylum seekers can't vote. And
Exactly.
so actually having that chance and to do it and have a say in how and who represents you is an absolute privilege. So I absolutely love that. I think that's something else is that the council elections often don't get as much fanfare and celebration as the federal and state elections do. Do you have any thoughts on why the council election is important?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because basically it goes beyond, our own individual level. It's the communities that we're shaping, the communities that we're living in that we can shape, and that brings a lot of broader values of inclusiveness, of social justice, of I guess generosity and friendliness, of empathy and compassion. When I vote, Kelly, I vote with really the idea that I want the greater good for others. And so I feel, for me, it's really that one moment in the year or, every few years that I can really express a little bit of gratitude back to the society. And by making a choice that benefits the society that I live in. And from a local government perspective, sometimes it does feel very trivial. When you hear, for example, two candidates, and one is going to say, I want this type of community infrastructure, and the other one will say, I want that type. Having said that, actually, it's going to be the infrastructure that our community will benefit from for a few decades. And it's actually shaping the community. So it is important. And again, even if we disagree, at the end of the day, it's the type of infrastructure that will and services and activities that will define us. And it's so nice to be able to have a say. So yes, that's something that I really really enjoy, and I love local elections because also they give you a sense of the fact that like the knowledge that you have at a ground level in your community. That's when you can actually translate that into some um, very practical type of choices. And sometimes, like some people have a different experience of a place than others. And it's quite important to capture that. So for example, like especially in the pandemic context where we're all restricted to, work from home and we can't really interact with the broader environment, I feel it's really important that some people who have been living there for a long time can express different choices, and this knowledge is very important too. And sometimes I feel, oh, I don't know if my vote should count as much because I don't know as much as them. But at the same time, I guess, I live equally the same amount of time as other people, living in Bendigo. And so I feel very Bendigonian in that sense. It's a nice feeling. Um, and I love our council too. I love our, the way that the Bendigo has been developed and has been developing itself over the last 4 or 5 years. We arrived there in 2015, and we've seen some massive improvements all over the place, actually, both in terms of the vibrancy and inclusiveness of the city, and in terms of the quality of the infrastructures as well. I think there's a lot of services that have been crafted for the community, and you can really feel that in the community. There's a strong community feeling in Bendigo. People say hi, people are connected, and there's a nice sense of solidarity in Bendigo. And I think it's pretty unique. Honestly, I think it's a bit of a secret that we shouldn't share too much.
No, we really shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's actually a bit of a paradise for families with young children as well. It's a very green city, very safe. People are extremely nice. The quality of life is second to none, honestly. Um, yeah, uh, I think there's a lot to offer in Bendigo, and being able to vote and to basically being represented by the best candidates we can have is really important. The one thing I find a bit hard sometimes is to be really well informed. And I would encourage everyone, to reach out, basically to keep informed by reading the papers, by listening to the radio, by checking the social media or the TV ads, by being actively and proactively informed. That's something that is quite important in a democratic system. And I know in a cross-cultural context, I had to adapt a little bit in that sense. And it's not about getting the little pamphlets right at the last minute. Sometimes it's about checking, maybe going a little bit above and beyond, and checking the different profiles of different candidates, and almost like googling them. Sometimes you fact check a few things also on Google. You can fact check candidates.
Definitely. And I'm pretty sure most candidates would have a public email address or phone number, and they're actually
Exactly right.
wanting people who are part of the community to approach them and tell them what it is that you think is something that's really important and you want them to deal with. Like
And there's
that's
some
literally
great
their,
candidates this year too.
yeah, that's their whole purpose. The whole purpose is to represent you as the
Plus,
community.
in a local government context, we often forget how generous the candidates are. Being in a council position is not easy. It often requires a lot of time and effort, and dedication, and it's not necessarily very rewarding from a financial point of view or from a family point of view. There's a lot of sacrifice to make. So people come really with their best, best feelings, and with an aspiration to do the best they can for the community. So yeah, it's quite a nice feeling to be able to vote for the local elections in that sense.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. One thing is with these series of events is that we've been having some multicultural candidates come on to speak. So we had Zara Haderbig, who is running for election in Greater Shepparton, and next week we are having Susan Yengi, who is running for election in Melbourne, and she's from the South Sudanese community.
That's
And so
awesome.
I was wondering, did you have any thoughts on why multicultural people should get more involved in politics, but not just through standing for election, but also through voting?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Essentially, it is a way to participate in a society, and to be able to be included in a society too. And it's a wonderful way, because it means that that's the one opportunity we have to be able to own our bit of a society, and to influence and impact positively the livelihoods of others. And that's something that is, again, like, I think, beyond our personal circumstances, being able to reach out to people we don't even know sometimes, but that we're able to influence in a positive way. So it's beyond our own communities, and that's where I think it's beautifully multicultural and intercultural, or cross-cultural, if you want. If one day I could imagine myself being a candidate for a local government, I wouldn't be a candidate only necessary for the French community. And I believe that many, people from a CALD background, from a culturally and linguistically diverse background, would be quite empowered to work for the greater good, to work for the greater good of other people from multicultural communities, but just in general, of people coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. And most often, those people have a massive amount of experience, of human experience and life skills, expertise, because they experience many different cross-cultural contexts and situations, some that were extremely hard. And those people are extremely good at problem solving, because they had to be exposed to very difficult situations precisely, and to come up with solutions. And I think there's a huge amount of intelligence there that can be positively engineered in a council, or in a public service context. Um, and that's something that we don't necessarily tap into at a society level. But yeah, that's something. For me, it's also a way to see a country that is really inclusive and equitable in the first place. So I'd love to see more people coming, belonging to different minority groups, and when you combine them, it's actually a majority. So maybe people from well, Cal community backgrounds, um, equal amount of candidates from a gender point of view, some candidates who would be um, experiencing some form of mobility impairments or cognitive impairments, some people who are also from different sexual orientations and also different religious beliefs. That's something that is very important because it reflects the diversity of our society, and it means that at the end, no one is going to be left out. If we have, like just like a prototype of candidate that corresponds to almost like a stereotype candidate, and that's a uniformed type of representation, it means that a lot of people are not represented and feel left out. So yeah, it's good because it means we can come up with also a greater diversity of ideas and exchange them, foster innovation, look at problems with different perspectives. Yeah, I think it has many benefits really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I can't wait for in the future, even younger people to be running for council as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I should have said that actually. Yeah, there's a whole thinking, I think, around the world with sort of even um, bringing a little bit forward the voting age, and I think people were talking about the age of 16 or like even younger in some cases. And I think that it has some relevance. Like that's something that could be looked into because it's always good to include people and to empower them and give them ownership. That's when you will see basically people being more engaged, being potentially more excited, more inspired to change things and to basically do better things for others, not just for themselves. And I think that that's something that has a lot of value and merit.
Definitely. What a beautiful note to end on. Thanks so much, Bruno, for joining me and the rest of us watching today for the Your Voice, Your Vote event. Before we end, I have some important information about how this year's council elections are going to run. And I was just chatting to Bruno earlier. He hasn't received his postal ballot yet, but hopefully it'll be coming soon because they've just posted it this week. So this year's council elections have will look a little bit different. So you're going to receive a pack in the mail if you've been enrolled to vote somewhere between supposedly the 6th and the 8th of October, but it might be a little bit later. And you have until 6 p.m. on the Friday of the 23rd of October to vote. So inside the pack, you're going to have information about the candidates, which is what Bruno talked about earlier. It's really important to read all of that, an envelope for the ballot, instructions on how to vote, and a reply paid envelope to mail back your vote. So it's really important to try and mail it back as soon as possible, just so that your vote will get counted. And it's also really important to try and read as much about the candidates as possible before you vote. And if you have any problems with understanding how to vote, or if you need some in language support with voting, please feel free to contact us. You can contact us on our Facebook page or our phone number. I'll leave some information up in the description of this post. Thank you so much, Bruno, for joining us tonight. It's been a real privilege and really fun to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you, Kelly. It was great.
Awesome. Bye, everyone. Good night.
Bye.